Chapter 5:11. Densely packed worms, crawling worms. The silver hairpin was instantly covered by those worms as it covered the entire ground. The youngsters then realized. The place where Yiqing Luo's silver hairpin had shot was a palm-sized worm cocoon. That worm cocoon was connected to a silver thread which they couldn't see earlier. The place where the silver thread was connected to was the place where Yiqing Luo had used the other silver hairpin to poke into the door slit. If they pushed open this room door under the situation where they couldn't see it with their naked eyes. Under the influence of the silver thread, the worm cocoon would split open and in an instant. It would be covered by these worms. The minute they thought of these worms crawling all over them, the youngsters started to have goosebumps. The range of these worms' activity was limited to the vicinity of the third room and didn't cross over to the second or fourth room's entrance. It could be seen that between the rooms, there was an invisible array which separated the rooms. When Yiqing Luo saw the overwhelming number of worms, her scalp couldn't help but turn numb. It was simply too creepy. Looking at the palm-sized worm cocoon, it could actually crawl out thousands upon thousands of worms. The third room's entrance and railings were considered spacious, at least able to accommodate 10 over adults standing. But these worms, after they covered the entire ground, as both sides were obstructed by the array, the worms were squeezed into this area and started to squirm one by one. There was a tendency to surge upwards. Originally, on seeing these worms not being able to climb up the wooden pillars, the youngsters who were hanging in mid-air heaved a sigh of relief, were now so frightened that their faces turned pale. What would happen if these worms surged upwards? If they surged to the highest point, they would directly climb onto them. The youngsters' scalps turned numb as they didn't dare to imagine that scenario. What they were more worried about was Yiqing Luo, who was hanging upside down at the entrance. She was the closest to the ground, unlike them who were on the roof. Those worms piled up higher and higher and had already overflowed the silver thread. The hanging Yiqing Luo was just a fist's distance away. When the youngsters saw this, their hearts were extremely anxious. All of them bit their lower lips tightly, suppressing their screams which were about to burst out. Standing right in front, the youngster who was saved by Yiqing Luo earlier had a pale face as a ball of fire burned in his pupils. He released the iron thread with one hand and was about to charge towards Yiqing Luo. He was prepared to fight for a little more time for Yiqing Luo. Let these worms swallow him up first. Just as he was about to jump down, the young man behind him pulled him back. Look! 20 over youngsters saw Yiqing Luo standing upside down, her fingertips pressing against the silver hairpin which was inserted into the door slit. The red feather fan in his other hand spread open. Like a leaping flame, it bloomed in her palm. As his fingertips moved, the feather fan shot out densely packed iron wires. These iron wires instantly pierced into the swarm of worms. The iron wire was so sharp that it easily cut countless insects into halves. However, they couldn't handle the sheer number of bugs. Every time one wave died, another wave would follow the thread and climb up. The end of the iron wire was the feather fan in Yiqing Luo's hands. Placing these iron wires down was simply giving these worms a chance to devour Yiqing Luo. But what made the youngsters astonished was that the insects didn't attack like Yiqing Luo. Those bugs were moving at an extremely fast speed towards the iron wire that was inserted into the silver hairpin's door slit. Once the bugs climbed onto the silver hairpin, they suddenly disappeared without a trace. The youngsters were all dumbstruck. It was until those densely packed worms had completely disappeared, leaving behind the ground which was filled with worm corpses which were cut into two halves by the iron wire when they were suddenly enlightened. Chapter 5:12. In the boundary of the area where the insects were crawling, numerous iron wires formed into the shape of a talisman. Even those youngsters who didn't know much about arrays could tell that this was a type of array. And this was the array which lured these insects into the array. Yiqing Luo flipped down and landed stably on the ground. Her 5 fingers plucked that silver hairpin out directly. The room's door opened silently. It was settled just like that. They had reached their destination and were able to get the exquisite pagoda. However, when Yiqing Luo saw the open door, her expression wasn't as joyful and relaxed as expected. Instead, it was extremely grave. "Come down." Yi-Ching Luo opened her mouth calmly as her voice sounded a little tensed. The youngsters' hearts were lifted once again. Could it be that there was an even more terrifying array in the room? One after another, they landed softly on the ground from where the iron wires were hanging. When they stepped onto the thick floor, the youngsters then heaved a sigh of relief as they felt as though their lives had been saved. Yi-Ching Luo threw that silver hairpin in her hand to that youngster who had almost fallen into the illusion array. "All the insects are sealed in the silver hairpin and I'll leave it to you for safekeeping. Who knows, it might become our help." Hearing that it was insects, the youngsters couldn't help but shuddered. The dense swarm of insects just now had truly frightened them. The youngster kept the silver hairpin into his sleeve expressionlessly. "Don't be in a hurry to relax." Yi-Ching Luo's lips curled slightly as her vision returned to the open room. When the youngsters' gazes turned over, the sigh of relief that they had let out was completely stuck in their throats. It was really a life for every step they took. They had just settled the cocoon array and immediately following that, there was another terrifying mechanism waiting for them. They saw in the third room, there were 4 racks with various kinds of rare treasures placed on them. A huge luminous pearl illuminated the entire room, making it exceptionally bright. In the middle of the rack was an empty path. What made the youngsters shocked was that this empty path which allowed one to walk on was filled with densely packed blue light rays, as it kept on sweeping. Although they didn't understand what these blue light rays represented. But they knew that these light rays were some kind of mechanism. Possibly, it was similar to the profound chi fluctuation mechanism at the outer area of Death God Castle. Yi-Ching Luo's brows sunk as her eyes squinted, seriously sizing up these blue rays. The exquisite pagoda was in the third room and Dmo Xian had simply indicated that there was a profound chi fluctuation scanning mechanism installed in the room, similar to the one outside Death God Castle. This could be considered as a modern infrared ray. In this era, there were actually people who used profound chi to create infrared mechanisms. He didn't know who was the one who designed the arrays and mechanisms in Death God Castle, it was simply godly. When she was once the reclusive patriarch, Yi-Ching Luo had received plenty of infrared training. Although, these were somewhat similar to infrared rays. However, it was still no match for modern technology. Yi-Ching Luo glanced sideways. "Pay attention to the time the guards search, I'll take a look at the density of these light rays." There were more than 20 of them. Although the lighting in Death God Castle was dim, if the guards came searching, they would be too big of a target and would be easily discovered. The youths stood guard, paying attention to their surroundings. They did not dare to move, for fear of triggering some other mechanism. Yi-Ching Luo congealed her senses and placed her attention on the blue light. Lying on the ground, she narrowed her eyes and carefully calculated the frequency and density of the light rays. Chapter 513. These people, Yi-Ching Luo had already treated them as her own people from the bottom of her heart. She had no intention to conceal her own set of footwork. If these brothers were able to learn this set of footwork, it would be beneficial to the world group's development. But how much they could comprehend would depend on themselves. Yi-Ching Luo's gaze turned calm as her expression congealed as she spoke word by word. "Take note, all the items on the rack, remember not to touch them carelessly. If you slightly move it, it will trigger the array to be activated." When the youngsters heard that, their expressions turned solemn as they nodded their heads. Seeing the entire room filled with rare treasures, these youngsters were indeed tempted. But no matter how rare the treasures were, it wasn't as important as everyone's lives, or their own lives. Along the way, they had seen quite a number of mechanisms and arrays and there were several times where they almost lost their lives. "Watch carefully." Yi-Ching Luo's voice was mellow as it was transmitted into the youngsters' ears from the mercenary group badge. It was as if something had struck their hearts. 20 over pairs of eyes were all fixed onto Yi-Ching Luo. Yi-Ching Luo's actions were swift as she displayed her footwork, agilely avoiding one after another blue light rays. That nimble figure was like a lady dancing in the light rays. Her posture was enchanting, making one's heart palpitate. From the moment she entered the room, to avoiding the blue light rays and arriving at the inner part of the room, the time Yiqing Luo used was not more than 10 breaths. The speed was so fast that it made one tongue-tied. The youngsters were shocked by Yiqing Luo's speed. That footwork was strange like a shadow, precisely avoiding every single light ray. By the time they regained their senses, Yiqing Luo was already standing opposite them as a pair of encouraging eyes gazed deeply at them through the blue light rays. "Next, who's up?" Yiqing Luo's cold voice was heard from the mercenary group badge. 20 over youngsters looked at each other in dismay. Their hearts thumped hard. This was too fast. How was it possible for them to memorize that strange footwork which Yiqing Luo displayed after just one look? How could they possibly remember her movements to avoid those blue light rays? Suddenly, a figure stood out. It was Imo Han Shang. He raised his arm, indicating that he could try first. Yiqing Luo's lips curled into an encouraging smile as she nodded, "I'll wait for you here." Towards Imo Han Shang, she didn't really understand him. Yiqing Luo wasn't clear about his ability. However, as the young master of the mercenary guild, his prestige in the mercenary guild was quite high. He must not be an ordinary person. As for why Imo Han Shang didn't hesitate to offend the Yuchi family, appearing to stand up for her, and even taking the initiative to join the mercenary group to build momentum for the world group, Yiqing Luo still couldn't figure it out. No one would help a person for no reason. Perhaps, Imo Han Shang had some motives. But Yiqing Luo's intuition told her that even if Imo Han Shang had an ulterior motive, he would not hurt the world group. Imo Han Shang twisted his neck as he took out a piece of black cloth from his sleeve, learning from Yiqing Luo to wrap his hair tightly, not leaving a single strand of hair. Even a strand of hair could brush past the blue light. When Imo Han Shang's feet stepped into the room, that delicate face was filled with seriousness and solemnity. That pair of slightly raised red phoenix eyes narrowed slightly, emitting an invisible cold and sharp glint. He bent down, and his slender body quickly entered the blue light. Seeing Imo Han Shang's actions, Yiqing Luo was shocked. His footwork and the position he stepped on were basically the same as hers. Moreover, the speed and rhythm were controlled just right. Chapter 514. This Imo Han Shang indeed had extraordinary ability. His memory had also exceeded Yiqing Luo's imagination. Luckily, this extraordinary young man had entered the world group, becoming their brother. "Don't relax, pay attention to the front, your right side. Well done, the last line of defense." That cold voice was extremely decisive. Imo Han Shang was extremely cooperative. Imo Han Shang successfully reached Yiqing Luo's side. Looking at the sweat on the young man's forehead, that handsome face revealed a relieved smile. Yiqing Luo walked over and patted his shoulder lightly to show encouragement. "You've done very well, but I'm a little curious. What were you mumbling about earlier?" Imo Han Shang was slightly astonished. As though he had not expected Yiqing Luo to notice these small details. His cheeks blushed slightly as he scratched his head in embarrassment. "Your footwork is very strange and your speed is extremely fast. I need to use the interval between breaths to determine when you take your next step." The youngsters opposite were suddenly enlightened. No wonder Imo Han Shang was able to replicate Yiqing Luo's actions so swiftly. They thought that Imo Han Shang also knew how to calculate the frequency of these blue light rays. Why hadn't they thought of this idea? Yiqing Luo nodded her head as though she was deep in thought. This was indeed a good idea. Imo Han Shang was able to remember every single action and every single step she took, and at the same time, he was able to calculate the frequency and magnitude of every single action. He was really a talent. Everyone's breathing frequency is different, so I'm afraid my calculation method isn't suitable for you. Imo Han Shang said in slight embarrassment. The blue light ray's frequency was the same. But everyone's breathing frequency was different. If they followed Imo Han Shang's breathing frequency to barge through the blue light rays, they would be easily swept by the blue light rays. After staying silent for a long time, Yiqing Luo looked towards the youngsters opposite her once again. "The third one, come over if you're confident." Qiao Jin and Yan Xiaoyi took a step forward at the same time. Realizing that someone had stood out at the same time as them, the two of them stared at each other and immediately retreated back into the group. These two really had a tacit understanding. Yan Xiaoyi pursed her lips as she gave a light harumph, pointing at herself and pointing at the blue light rays, indicating that she would go first. Qiao Jin shrugged his shoulders. Yan Xiaoyi stretched her tendons and rolled on the ground, drilling into the blue light rays. Yan Xiaoyi tried her best to replicate Yi Qing Luo's actions. Although the process was a little thrilling, but under Yi Qing Luo's timely reminder, it was still a daunting experience without any danger. After Yan Xiaoyi, the next one was Qiao Jin. These youngsters had learned to be smart. Directly making use of Mo Han Shang's breathing memory method, he directly found the rhythm of the brothers who had passed through the blue light rays. Only two youngsters were too anxious and their skin was cut by the blue light rays. Only two youths were too nervous and their skin was cut by the light. Fortunately, they reacted in time and didn't cause a disaster. Yi Yezi said. Yi, long Yi. Yi, they seemed to have reached the end of the room, but in fact, every room here had a special secret room. Mu Yi. Yi Qing Luo said. He, the King Master. The Wu of the Han Shang, the Chen. Chen Tian, Yi Chen Yi, Chen, death to Chen Long, Chen Wu was Qing. Had long God Yi Chen Luo said. Chapter 5:15. Yi Qing Luo gazed at the wall for some time and suddenly stretched out her hand as she placed it on a certain spot. The wall seemed to have caved in. The walls quickly moved to the left and right. A passage to a secret chamber appeared before everyone's eyes. At a glance, the secret room was pitch black. The youngsters were still in shock. There was a secret room under the mechanism, so no one noticed that Yi Qing Luo's expression suddenly turned grave and solemn. Yi Qing Luo narrowed her eyes as her eyes were filled with astonishment. She wasn't seeing things, right? Just now, when the door to the secret room was opened, she seemed to have seen the corner of a robe quickly disappear into the darkness. Someone had arrived here before them? Impossible. This thought had just flashed past her mind when Yi Qing Luo immediately dispelled this guess. She had totally relied on the detailed map that Dmo Xian had given her, before she was able to lead her gang of brothers to arrive here safely. Someone else would arrive before her? Wait a minute, could it be Yu Qipeng? In order to prevent them from completing the mission, in order to wait for them to give up on the mission, Yu Qipeng immediately accepted the mission. He might have borrowed the power of the dark forces to come here. After all, Yu Qipeng was overly confident in his mission to infiltrate Death God Castle and steal the exquisite pagoda. If it was Yu Qipeng, it wasn't impossible. Yi Qing Luo's heart was filled with thoughts and guesses as she sorted them out one by one. No matter who was the one who barged into the secret room before them, this meant that the world group's actions had been exposed. It was very likely that there would be a fierce battle to be fought. She had to find out who that person was. If it affected the training of these youths and caused the guards of Death God Castle to find out, none of them could leave this place alive. Thinking of this, Yi Qing Luo withdrew all the complicated thoughts in her heart. He took out the map that he had hidden in his chest like a treasure. She stuffed the map into Yan Xiaoyi's hands and with the illumination of the luminous pearl, she pointed out their current location to Yan Xiaoyi. You guys take the map and find the exquisite pagoda, I'm going to investigate something. The youths looked at her with puzzled gazes. Mercenary Group Badge Sound Transmission. I've activated the authority of the executive leader and Xiaoyi. You guys listen to her commands. If there are any accidents, directly send me a sound transmission through the badge. Yi Qing Luo didn't explain further. If she were to tell them that someone had entered the secret room before them, they would not be able to escape. It was bound to cause panic among the youths. It would also affect the progress of completing the mission. Yi Qing Luo stepped into the secret room and quickly disappeared into the darkness. Yan Xiaoyi and Qiao Jin couldn't stop him in time. After entering the secret tunnel, Yiqing Luo was completely certain that other than them, there were other people in the secret tunnel. She could faintly sense an extremely unfamiliar profound energy fluctuation. Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased tightly as she speedily headed towards the direction of that fluctuation. The secret chamber was full of twists and turns, with countless paths leading in different directions. Dmo Xian only marked one direction, which was the direction towards the exquisite pagoda. As for the fluctuation of the profound energy, it was clearly coming from the opposite direction. Could it be, it wasn't Yu Qipeng? Who could it be? Other thieves who snuck into Death God Castle to steal? Yiqing Luo's footsteps halted. If it were any other thief, as long as their target wasn't the same thing, then they wouldn't have anything to do with each other. There was no need for her to meddle in this matter. Didn't that person leave immediately after seeing them open the secret chamber? It was enough to tell that the other party didn't want to clash with them. Since that was the case, there was no need for her to chase after the other party. Yiqing Luo turned back and was preparing to head towards the path towards the exquisite pagoda. Chapter 5:16. Yiqing Luo's body continued to sink. A strong gust of yin wind blew, sucking her down. Yiqing Luo concentrated and swiftly gathered the profound qi into her limbs and bones. Her body suddenly became light as a feather. His feet landed firmly on the ground. What was going on? She had just walked through this secret passage and did not trigger any mechanisms at all. How could he have missed a step? What was this place? Yiqing Luo surveyed the surroundings. At this moment, she was in a huge prison cell. That's right, a prison cell. The air was filled with a thick stench that was extremely pungent. The surroundings were dark, with only a few torches on the stone walls illuminating the place. The flames flickered, and the shadows of the flames swayed. Pingsheng added a weird atmosphere to this dungeon. Yiqing Luo's brows creased slightly as astonishment flashed past her heart. There was actually a dungeon under the mechanisms of Death God Castle? This dungeon was clearly quite old. The smell was a little too strong. Apart from the fishy stench, there was also a faint smell of blood mixed with it. Suddenly, Yiqing Luo's expression changed slightly as her ears twitched sensitively and an inexplicable chill ran down her spine. She heard a series of orderly footsteps. Yiqing Luo swept a glance at the surroundings and it was filled with prison cells, with no place to hide. The footsteps were getting closer and closer. Based on the sound of footsteps, there were at least 10 people. Their steps were orderly, and the strength of their steps on the ground was also uniform. They were probably the guards of this dungeon. On the map drawn by Dmo Xian, there was no indication of the dungeon. Dmo Xian should not have been here before. Towards everything that happened here, Yiqing Luo knew nothing, so she must not let these guards discover her. This gigantic dungeon, which was hidden under the Death God Castle, was too mysterious and strange. Yiqing Luo's body was light as she moved slowly. He quickly moved to the cell closest to her. The cell was tightly locked. It was pitch black and quiet inside. The flickering light from the fire couldn't reach the inside of the cell at all. Yiqing Luo used her spiritual consciousness to sense the surroundings, but there was no sign of life in the prison. It should be an empty cell. Yiqing Luo decisively decided that this prison cell was the best choice. She closed her eyes and silently chanted the secret incantation. Her figure swayed as she executed her blink movement and entered the prison cell. There were quite a lot of straw in the prison cell, and when she stepped on it, it was soft, giving off a rustling sound. Yiqing Luo was worried that the team of guards would hear her, so she didn't dare to move recklessly. He shrunk his body into a corner and quietly pulled over a pile of straw to cover himself. Shortly after, he concealed his aura. Yiqing Luo's thoughts were all on the guards outside, so she didn't notice that in the darkness, a pair of sparkling eyes was staring at her without blinking. The pupils were filled with astonishment and astonishment. Gradually, it turned into a meaningful and profound meaning. Not of, and Qing Luo. Qing Luo said, long of the light. Ling. Qing Luo said, ling Luo, she said. Through the straw, Yiqing Luo saw 10 over-prison guards dressed in green long robes, with large swords hanging on their waists, walking past in an orderly manner. The 2 guards walked past the prison cell and 10 over pairs of eyes swept past the prison cell in an orderly manner. When these guards passed by the prison cell, a dozen pairs of eyes swept across the cell in unison. When these guards saw the prison cell that Yiqing Luo was hiding in, they suddenly stopped in their tracks. Through the gaps of the straw, Yiqing Luo saw those 10 over pairs of eyes, staring straight at the direction where she was hiding. Chapter 5:17. She had been discovered? Yiqing Luo's heart thumped hard. She had obviously concealed her presence completely. Were these underground prison guards so resourceful? Just as she was concentrating, preparing to execute her blink movement to leave the prison cell before these guards came over to capture her, the underground prison guards who were standing outside for several breaths turned around in unison and continued to patrol in front. Yiqing Luo. What the hell was going on? Had they discovered her or not? The footsteps of that group of guards gradually went further away. Yiqing Luo noticed that other than the time they stopped at her cell door for several breaths, they had just casually swept past the other cells. This made Yiqing Luo feel even more strange. Gradually, the underground prison fell into darkness and silence once again. There were no more footsteps from those guards. The entire underground prison was so silent that it was a little strange. After staying in the prison for so long, Yiqing Luo was more or less immune to this pungent stench. Especially after she hid behind this pile of straw, that pungent stench became even more intense. As time went by, she got used to it. As the underground prison guards were standing at the entrance for several breaths' time, Yiqing Luo had been nesting under the straw for some time before she moved her 4 limbs. She had just moved when she heard a hoarse ear-piercing voice. It's actually a young lady. He he he. That hoarse laughter was extremely ear-piercing. It made one's hair stand on end. Yiqing Luo's pupils suddenly contracted. This voice was right beside her. There was someone beside her and she actually didn't realize it? Yiqing Luo's brows creased in alarm as she speedily pushed the straw aside and rolled on the ground. After she was far away from that direction, she congealed her gaze towards the direction of the voice as she suppressed her voice. Who is it? You're rather agile, no wonder you're able to walk till here. That voice continued, indeed the times have changed. It's only been a few years and a lady can also become an outstanding thief. Hearing this emotional voice and words, Yiqing Luo's tightly knitted brows loosened slightly. This voice was very old and belonged to a man. Perhaps it was because his throat was dry, it sounded a little hoarse. This old man didn't have any ill intentions. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes as she carefully sized up the old man who was sitting beside her. This old man, just who was he? Before she teleported in, she had specially sensed this prison cell, and there was no sound at all. Moreover, she had been lying in the pile of straw for at least half an hour. She did not notice anyone beside her at all. If not for the old man's words, she probably wouldn't have realized it. Little girl, there's no need to treat me like a scourge. The elderly saw Yiqing Luo's eyes filled with vigilance as he burst out laughing. I'm trapped by the profound ice shackles and can't move at all. Profound ice chains? Yiqing Luo had heard of this before. It was rumored that the spiritual energy of heaven and earth had been gathered to form the indestructible ice as its material, and it was forged by the number 1 blacksmith. Those who were chained by the profound ice shackles, no matter how high their profound rank was, no matter how strong they were, they would not be able to break free. Old man, who are you? Yiqing Luo got closer and pushed aside the straw. He saw an old man dressed in ragged clothes, his hands fixed to the wall. The chains that fixed him in place glowed with a cold light. They were indeed profound ice chains. A person who needed the profound ice chains to restrain was absolutely not to be belittled. Yiqing Luo absolutely believed that this old man's ability. Not only was it above her, it was extremely powerful. Otherwise, based on her acute sense, how could she possibly not discover that there was someone beside her? Chapter 518. So. Earlier those dungeon guards weren't looking at her but this old man? Yiqing Luo was rather curious about who were the people locked up in this dungeon. She placed her vision back onto the old man as she sized him up carefully. The old man looked extremely disheveled. Under the dim light, the old man's clothes were tattered and there were blood scabs on it. His withered yellow hair was in a mess, looking like a bird's nest as each strand was knotted. The old man was covered in filth and that face was so black that she couldn't tell what he looked like originally. Yiqing Luo suddenly recalled the old man's emotional few years as the corners of her eyes twitched. He couldn't have been locked up here for so many years and had not taken a bath right. Who I am isn't important. What's important is, young lady, if you fall into this place, you'll be the same as me, trapped here. Although the old man was covered in filth and his entire face was black, but only that pair of crystal clear eyes was exceptionally bright. What kind of enemy is this? Yiqing Luo didn't doubt the old man's words. The old man obviously didn't look like an ordinary person, but he was still imprisoned here by the profound ice shackles. She didn't feel that she could escape easily. But the meaning behind the old man's words represented that he knew what this place was. The old man shook his head and that chicken nest-like hair floated down a pile of powdery dirt. Young lady, even if you know where this place is, there's no way you can escape. That might not be the case. Yiqing Luo's brows rose. She wouldn't easily come to a conclusion on something that she hadn't tried. The old man squinted his eyes as his lips curled into a faint smile. Looks like young lady is very confident actually wanting to leave this place isn't impossible. His smile made Yiqing Luo's back abruptly turn chilly. Yiqing Luo's eyes twitched as she hugged her arms and rubbed them. You. Aren't you trying to say that if I save you, you'll bring me away? Smart. The old man nodded as the pile of dust on his head floated down like snowflakes. That pitch-black and scabbed face was smiling into a ball. As expected. Yiqing Luo rolled her eyes as she couldn't be bothered with him. She directly turned around and walked towards the prison cell. Hey, little girl, you don't believe me? From the way you looked at me just now, I saw the word expert. You still don't believe me? Old man saw that Yiqing Luo didn't give him any face and wanted to leave the prison cell as he anxiously leaned forward. The profound ice chains crackled as they rubbed against each other. In the silent dungeon, the old man's voice and the sound of the profound ice chains were extremely clear. Yiqing Luo was so shocked that she stopped in her tracks. Damn it! Was this old man doing this on purpose? With such a loud noise, if those dungeon guards discovered them, neither of them would be able to escape. She turned her head and glared at the old man. I believe you. If you really had the ability to take me away, you wouldn't be trapped here now. The old man heaved a heavy sigh, his body softened, and hung heavily on the ice chains. Because of this, the chains let out a loud sound. I'd not expected that not only can a young lady become a thief, but she's also so intelligent. He muttered softly, shaking his head and sighing, I haven't understood the situation of the outside world for the past few years, so I can't even bluff people. Yiqing Luo. This old man, was he really an expert? Was he really an expert who needed to be trapped by the profound ice chains? Most elderly experts, weren't they all immortal-like, even if they were in a sorry state, there would still be an immortal air floating around them? This damn. Chapter 519. God Thief. Can't you be a little more goddamn quiet? You keep mumbling to yourself all day long, pitter-patter. Can't you save some energy? A loud and clear voice broke the silence of the underground prison as it was heard speedily from afar. Yiqing Luo could tell that the direction of the voice was 100 meters away from the underground prison. She shut her eyes and speedily constructed a map in her mind from the direction where the voice came from. That place should be the resting place of the underground prison guards. Wait a minute. Yiqing Luo suddenly opened her eyes as a sliver of astonishment flashed past her eyes. Did she hear wrongly? That guard shouted, God Thief? That God Thief who had died in Death God Castle 10 years ago? It was said that 10 years ago, Nirvana Realm's #1 god thief had infiltrated Death God Castle to steal something and from then on disappeared from the world, disappearing into the legends. Many people said that God Thief had died in Death God Castle. God Thief's death also caused Death God Castle's reputation to soar. This amusing old man, who looked extremely unreliable, was actually God Thief? "I've been locked up by you for several years, not allowed to move or speak. Do you treat me as a dead man?" The old man spat out fiercely as he raised his voice and roared back. Perhaps it was because his throat was dry all year round, his roar was extremely ear-piercing. That guard didn't make any sound. Apparently he was already used to the old man's character. Yi-Ching Luo's scalp turned numb from the shock. She dug her ears as a pair of half-squinted eyes gazed at the old man. This old man's character, why did she feel an inexplicable sense of familiarity? After the old man finished his roar, he suddenly coughed several times as that pair of bright eyes stared at Yi-Ching Luo. "Young lady, your gaze. You're God Thief?" Yi-Ching Luo directly interrupted the old man's words as she returned back to the front of the old man. The old man shook that chicken nest-like head as he clicked his tongue. "I've not expected a young lady like you to have heard of my name. Ha ha ha. Even though I've not been in the world for so many years, there are still legends about me." He really was God Thief. Why did this God Thief look a little silly? No wonder he was trapped here for 10 years. There are indeed legends about you. Yi-Ching Luo blinked her eyes craftily, but this legend. It was all about how you fell in Death God Castle, the legend of a God Thief turning into a coward. Pooey. The old man clenched his fists in agitation as he stared at Yi-Ching Luo with a black face. "How could I be a coward? What Death God Castle? If it wasn't for that brat's tricks, would I be trapped here? It's a fact that you're trapped. Even if it's a scam and you've fallen for it, that's the other party's ability." Yi-Ching Luo shrugged her shoulders as she turned a blind eye to God Thief's agitation. Stinking brat? Who was he referring to? Could it be the Castle Lord of Death God Castle? That doesn't seem likely. Death God Castle had existed for so many years, how could the Castle Lord possibly be a stinking brat? No matter what, he should be an old man. However, the little brat, who was able to trick the holy thief of a generation, did indeed have some skills. Yi-Ching Luo looked at the infuriated old man who was stomping his feet. If it wasn't for the fact that he was trapped by the profound ice shackles, he would probably fly into a rage, as she snickered secretly in her heart. She was just saying that this old man's character was a little familiar. Indeed, it was somewhat similar to Teacher Gue Yu's character. The same impulsiveness, the same fiery temper. The only difference was that Teacher Gue Yu didn't care about his reputation at all, whereas God Thief was extremely concerned about his own good name. Because of this, the moment Yi-Ching Luo said that, he became a coward. Chapter 520. God Thief, you want to leave this place? Yi-Ching Luo's lips curled. God Thief was still angry because of the word coward as he spat out a gust of cold air. Don't you want to leave after being locked up here for a few years? Yi-Ching Luo's eyes curved as she gave a crafty smile. I can save you. God Thief frowned in puzzlement as he deeply felt that after so many years of not leaving this godforsaken place, he had completely disconnected from the outside world. He totally couldn't figure out what this young lady was thinking about. Earlier when he suggested Yi-Ching Luo to save him, she put on a look of disdain, as though she didn't want to bother about him. Why did she agree to save him in a blink of an eye? Before I save you, you have to tell me where is this place, why are you locked up here, do you have any way to leave? Yi-Ching Luo paused as the crafty and scheming look in her eyes was obvious. After finding out that this old man was God Thief, Yi-Ching Luo had no intention to let him off. After this, God Thief, we people in the pugilistic world, especially people like you who have a legend in the pugilistic world, you should know the logic of repaying kindness, right? God Thief was in a mess. Indeed, he hadn't used his brain for several years and totally couldn't keep up with this young lady's thoughts. This young lady wasn't fooled by him at all. Instead, she had turned the tables on him. This young lady was really quick-witted and her brain worked extremely fast. Young lady, if I have a way to leave, then I will be the one saving you, not you saving me. God Thief felt that if he were to fall into the hands of a young lady today, his reputation in this lifetime would be ruined. Yi Qing Luo's brows rose as she spread out her hands. If you can save me, then you won't be chained to the wall by the profound ice shackles. Damn. This young lady's words made sense. He actually had nothing to say in reply. I'm a dignified God Thief, naturally I will repay kindness. God Thief gritted his teeth as his features turned sinister. Young lady, the prerequisite is, you are able to undo the profound ice shackles. The profound ice shackles were indestructible, and it was condensed with the world's #1 armament master's powerful profound chi. In order to undo the profound ice shackles, one had to steal the key to the chain. God Thief's bright eyes flashed past an indistinct radiance. Young lady, I have a question to ask you. What problem? Who taught you that secret technique? Secret technique? Did the thief saint see her teleport and enter this prison cell? Why was it that every time she used teleportation, she would be seen through by others? Could it be that the rewards of the Purgatory Tower were all secrets that couldn't be made public? Thinking back to the last time, the ghost doctor had also seen her use the teleportation secret art. That was why he had appeared to help her when the administrator was looking for trouble, and had even taken her in as his disciple. The ghost doctor had even mentioned that it was the King of Thieves' teleportation secret technique. Saint Thief. King of Thieves, Yi Qing Luo blinked her eyes. The King of Thieves. Don't tell me he's your ancestor. A ancestor. Blarg, cough, cough, cough. Holy pirate choked and coughed. His body, which was hanging on the ice chains, shook as he coughed. The chains hit the wall and made a loud noise. Yi Qing Luo was at a loss, isn't it? Then how did you recognize that it's a secret technique? God Thief, who had finally stopped coughing, had no expression on his pitch-black face. Only that pair of bright eyes revealed some helplessness. Yes, that's the King of Thieves' secret technique. How did you find out about it? Chapter 521. Overlord? God Thief frowned as he searched for this name in his mind. After some time, he suddenly nodded his head. I've heard of this name before. It's rumored that he's an incredible young man. Just based on his own ability, he established his own powerhouse in Nirvana realm. His words paused and his eyes suddenly shone. I heard that the Imperial Palace has kept quite a number of rare treasures, and they are absolutely not inferior to these things in Death God Castle. It was because of this that God Thief remembered Dmo Xian's name. It's him. Yi Qing Luo nodded. You know the blink movement secret art? The light in God Thief's eyes dimmed slightly. He muttered Dmo Xian's name and immediately shook his head. No. Initially, he opened his mouth to talk to this young lady was because she displayed the blink movement's secret art. He wanted to find out from her mouth where she learnt this secret art from and how she learned it to such an exquisite level. Dmo Xian, could it be that the item from that year was with Dmo Xian? Could it be that your old ancestor didn't impart this secret art to you, instead? Instead, he placed it in the Purgatory Tower as the reward for the first level of Purgatory? Yi Qing Luo didn't ask this question. God Thief hid the deep meaning in his eyes, and when he raised his eyes again, his eyes were filled with smiles. How would I be able to guess old ancestors' thoughts since you know the blink movement's secret art? Then it's easy. The profound ice shackles key is on that prison guard. Steal the key over. Steal. After being locked up for 10 years, he still couldn't change his thief's temper. What was on his mind was still the idea of stealing something. Yi Qing Luo sat down next to God Thief as she leaned against the wall and crossed her legs. You haven't answered my earlier question. God Thief. This young lady really didn't let go of any chance. This is Death God Castle's underground prison, and those who are imprisoned here are all cultivators who had once barged into the underground prison, and their cultivation are not bad. God Thief muttered to himself for a moment and started to answer Yiqing Luo's question. Those who are able to barge into the mechanism and reach the underground prison are all cultivators who were in Death God Castle and almost succeeded. When Yiqing Luo heard that, her slender brows creased slightly as she didn't understand. In a place like Death God Castle, shouldn't they just kill the intruders after catching them? Why did they go through so much trouble to build a dungeon and lock these people up in it? This trial lasted for 10 years. What benefits did this bring to Death God Castle? Because Death God Castle needs cultivators with decent abilities to nurture into their own thieves. Holy Pirate squinted his eyes and shot out a sharp light. If you do not agree, you will be locked up here and beaten every few days until you agree. As a thief who could enter Death God Castle. He must be a famous thief in the Nirvana realm. Some of these thieves had their own teams and weren't willing to betray them. Some of them had their own pride and were unwilling to lower themselves to others. But some of them, because they could not withstand the vicious beatings every now and then, finally agreed to the Death God Castle's request and signed a life and death contract. You were beaten up for 10 years? Yiqing Luo was astonished. Even the word coward was able to agitate God Thief's pride, so how did he survive after being beaten up by these guards for 10 years? No wonder God Thief's body was riddled with scars and scabs of all sizes. Chapter 522. These people in Death God Castle were really patient. 10 years didn't agree, so they guarded for 10 years. These guards had extremely good control over the way and strength they used to beat people. Apparently they had gone through special training. Not only did they hit the most painful part of the human body, but they also didn't hurt the cultivator's meridians, in case it damaged the cultivator's ability. Yiqing Luo was about to kneel down in front of Death God Castle's Castle Lord. She had to admit that Death God Castle's Castle Lord was indeed an intelligent person. There was no lack of talents in this world, but what they lacked were talents who could be used by themselves. Making use of Death God Castle's rare treasures, they attracted numerous outstanding thieves or cultivators to come forth to steal. Following that, they fell into Death God Castle's trap and were locked in the underground prison. If they were to submit and sign the life and death contract, it would be equivalent to selling their lives to Death God Castle for the rest of their lives. Death God Castle had established their own forces and were able to call on these thieves to search for rare treasures. Later on, they placed these rare treasures in Death God Castle as publicity. It was simply too profitable. But Yiqing Luo felt that by gathering these top exponents whose lives were in their hands, it was absolutely not just to contribute to Death God Castle. Death God Castle's Castle Lord should have an even bigger plot. As long as you undo the profound ice shackles, I naturally have a way to get out. God Thief had been keeping silent all this while and couldn't help but opened his mouth to urge, steal the guard's key and help me undo the profound ice shackles first. Are you sure? Yiqing Luo felt that it wasn't reliable no matter how she heard it. If God Thief really had a way to get out, would he still be trapped here for 10 years? Although so many years have passed, but I remember clearly everything regarding Death God Castle's internal affairs. God Thief said with utmost certainty. Yiqing Luo could tell that God Thief's self-confidence was swelling continuously. Forget it, she wouldn't tease him anymore. Even if God Thief had no way to leave, Yiqing Luo intended to bring him away. Towards those with ability, she admired them. Especially this old man who was renowned in the entire Nirvana realm 10 years ago and was given the title of God Thief. Yiqing Luo naturally had the intention to rope him in. The world group was currently in the development stage and those youngsters still needed more tempering to grow step by step. If God Thief was willing to stay in the world group, it would definitely be beneficial to the world group. There's no need to go through so much trouble to steal the key. If I'm not careful and get discovered by the guards, not to mention the key, even I might end up hanging on the wall like you. Yiqing Luo walked towards God Thief as her index finger curled up as she knocked on the profound ice shackles. It was cold to the touch, and it was suffused with streams of cold light. As expected of the mystical ice shackles that were recorded in the Rare Treasures record, this material, this strength, it was really indescribable. If it wasn't for the sake of saving trouble, Yiqing Luo really couldn't bear to destroy this profound ice shackles. Under God Thief's astonished gaze, Yiqing Luo's fingers shook as a red feather fan blossomed with a bewitching flame glow, as though a fire elf was dancing excitedly on her fingertips. The red light flashed and transformed into a pair of sharp red blades. Crack! The profound ice shackles broke. Holy Pirate's arms suddenly drooped. He lost the support of the profound ice chain as he laid limply on the pile of straw. For the past 10 years, other than being beaten up viciously or being brought to undergo brainwashing, God Thief had always maintained the posture of being hung on the wall with his hands stretched out. His body's functions had completely stiffened and numbed. God Thief laid stiffly on the ground, and after some time, he finally moved his hands. Moving a little, his arms were very painful and weak. But no matter how he moved, he was still free. Chapter 523. Yiqing Luo's fingers clenched the feather fan tightly as she released another 2 sharp blades, slashing apart the restraints on God Thief's legs. God Thief's entire body tensed up as he trembled, as he kept on moving his body, trying his best to move his 4 limbs. He moved and propped himself up as he flipped over. He raised his hand up high, and the dim light from the fire shone into his eyes through the gaps of his fingers. God Thief inexplicably felt a sour sensation at the tip of his nose, as his eyes turned moist and hot. How many years had it been? How many years had he been imprisoned for? Finally, he was reborn. God Thief's lips revealed a relaxed smile. Young lady, this weapon of yours is just too heaven-defying, to even be able to sever the profound ice shackles. No one was clearer than him on the might of the profound ice shackles. If it wasn't for the indestructible profound ice shackles, how could he possibly be trapped in this place for 10 years? However, this young lady had effortlessly swung her fan and swung it with ease. He thought that he had to wait for Yiqing Luo to steal the key before he could be freed. Yiqing Luo's expression didn't contain any excitement or agitation. She squinted her eyes slightly as it shone with a biting cold glint. God Thief, I'm going to ask you a serious question. If we're discovered now, based on your current condition, will you be able to escape? God Thief, who was lying on the ground, raised his hand up high as it drooped down weakly. That pair of sparkling eyes were fixated on Yiqing Luo. It's too late. Yiqing Luo's eyes flashed as she displayed that set of footwork, and her petite figure instantly burrowed into the straw. At the same time, a series of orderly and powerful footsteps were heard outside the prison cell. Immediately following that team of prison guards appeared outside the prison cell. God Thief. We don't have time to waste with you. Today is the last time Castle Lord is talking to you. If you still don't know what's good for you, I'll take your life right now. The prison guard's rough voice bellowed out, and following that was the sound of a key opening the prison cell. Yiqing Luo hid in the straw as her back suddenly turned cold. Inexplicably, a dangerous and fatal feeling arose in her heart. Somehow she felt that the prison cell's temperature had dropped again, as though the air had been frozen into particles by the frost. Yiqing Luo's brows creased tightly as she heard someone walking into the prison cell. There was only the sound of footsteps. The guards didn't come in. Only one person came in, however, Castle Lord. The Castle Lord that the guard mentioned. Yiqing Luo didn't expect her luck to be so good. He had just saved Holy Pirate, and the next second, the mysterious castle master had appeared. The heavens really wanted her dead. Just the low pressure and cold air from the Castle Lord's entrance had already made Yiqing Luo sense a fatal danger. Yiqing Luo did not move at all. Through the gaps of the straw, she saw a tall and straight figure. Under the dim light, he looked slightly thin. This lord of the castle was extremely dangerous. Unfortunately, he discovered that the profound ice chains had been cut. If he wanted to escape with Holy Pirate, it would be as difficult as ascending to heaven. Saint Pirate, the castle lord's gentle voice seemed to be wrapped in a thick layer of frost, chilly and without the slightest emotion. He stood in front of Holy Pirate. He quietly looked at Holy Pirate on the ground. There was no surprise, no panic. Silence. There was a deathly silence. The surrounding air seemed to condense even more intensely. Yi-Ching Luo felt that it was difficult to even breathe. This castle lord's aura was just too strong. Holy pirate who was lying on the ground was cursing in his heart. This stinky brat didn't come earlier or later, but just when he had just touched his freedom. Stinky brat, I'm telling you, you. Chapter 524. Apparently, the castle lord's words weren't meant for God Thief. Then. This sentence was meant for the third person in the prison cell, Yi-Ching Luo, to hear. He had indeed discovered her. Yi-Ching Luo knew in her heart that there was no way she could avoid this castle lord. His powerful aura was not inferior to Dmo Xian. Discovering her was something that would happen sooner or later. So Yi-Ching Luo couldn't be bothered to hide as she lifted the straw. That straw was like a fairy scattering flowers, as it directly flew out. The straw was damp and there was a fishy smell. How dare you? Who are you? How dare you barge into Death God Castle? The prison head who was standing outside the prison cell saw an unfamiliar lady in the cell and his expression instantly turned gloomy. Especially when he saw the pile of straw that the lady had lifted, as it scattered onto the castle lord. How dare you be so rude to the castle lord? The prison head's expression changed as he swiftly rushed forward, drawing out his broadsword and slashed towards Yi-Ching Luo. Bam! Before he could get close to Yi-Ching Luo, the prison head seemed to be swept up by something as his body crashed heavily onto the wall, rolling onto the ground. The 10 overguards standing outside the prison cell were all dumbstruck, as they looked at the castle lord in astonishment. Yi-Ching Luo was also astonished. Earlier when the prison head slashed his broadsword over, she was just about to retaliate when she saw the castle lord standing opposite her, his sleeves fluttering as a burst of energy sent the prison head flying. This castle lord. Had he taken the wrong medicine? Attacking one's own people? Yi-Ching Luo narrowed her eyes as she started to size up the castle lord in front of her seriously. His jet black hair danced in the air, not tied up or tied up. The first thing that attracted Yi-Ching Luo was his eyes. It was a pair of cold, aloof, and arrogant eyes that glowed with a cold light. No desires, as calm as still water. It was as if nothing in the world could enter his eyes. He gave off a kind of coldness which made one's scalp go numb, as though it was covered with frost. That kind of coldness was emitted from his bones, a coldness towards all living things in the world. He just stood there, giving off a feeling of disdain towards the world. He was cold, but that face seemed as though it was sculpted by God's craftsmanship, full of vigor. What made Yi-Ching Luo even more astonished was that this person was wearing a blood-red long robe. It was fiery red like blood, representing passion and an evil charm that could charm the world. Such a cold youth was definitely not suitable for such a color. However, when he wore this red, he gave off a different aura. It did not feel out of place at all. Meeting his eyes, Yi-Ching Luo felt as though her entire body was wrapped in ice as she subconsciously shivered. You. Yi-Ching Luo opened her mouth, but her throat felt dry and uncomfortable. But Yi-Ching Luo discovered that when she opened her mouth to spit out a word, she clearly saw a sliver of faintly discernible light in that pair of castle lord's unperturbed eyes which seemed to have no focus at all. After some time, he didn't manage to wait for Yi-Ching Luo's next words. The lord of the castle frowned as a fierce look flashed across his eyes. Have we met before? Yi-Ching Luo frowned slightly and finally found her voice. He felt that this person's face was very familiar. He must have seen this person somewhere before. But at this moment, she couldn't remember. When he heard Yi-Ching Luo asking this question, a fierce look flashed past castle lord's eyes. He took large strides towards Yi-Ching Luo. What pounced on her was the cold arrogant aura which the castle lord brought. Yi-Ching Luo's heart shuddered as the alarm went off and she speedily retreated backwards. But her legs had not even moved a single step. That castle lord was already standing in front of her. Toes against toes. His loose black hair on his shoulders, because of the cold wind, floated onto Yi-Ching Luo's face. Chapter 525. Yi Qing Luo wanted to retreat. Castle Lord stretched out his long arm and held her waist tightly without any explanation. Yi Qing Luo's petite body turned stiff. Originally she thought that this young man was icy cold all over. But his palms and his chest were emitting a scorching heat. Yi Qing Luo was fixed in his arms and she could even feel the two palms which were pressed against his chest, emitting waves after waves of powerful heartbeat. She wanted to struggle but her hands were held tightly by him, totally immovable. "Let go of me." Yi Qing Luo gritted her teeth. Damn it. Was this so-called castle lord really sick? If he was sick, go and seek treatment. What was he trying to do by taking advantage of her without any explanation? Yi Qing Luo's struggle made the viciousness in Castle Lord's eyes intensified as the aura he was emitting turned even colder. As Yi Qing Luo struggled, she raised her head and stared at him. Then she met a pair of eyes which were surging with raging waves. Sharp, cold and severe. It was filled with dense murderous intent. This gaze made Yi Qing Luo shocked. "Can't remember me?" Castle Lord's arm which was holding her waist was extremely strong, as though he was going to break her waist. Yi Qing Luo frowned in pain. She twisted her body uneasily but met with an even stronger restraint from the young man. What did he mean by this? Could it be that they had met each other before? "Hey! Stinky brat, I'm the one who threatened that young lady to save me. Whatever you want to do, come at me, what's the point of hugging a young lady?" God Thief, who was lying on the ground, climbed up with his stiff limbs. His body was wobbling. However, Castle Lord totally didn't turn his gaze over. Only a pair of deep eagle-like black eyes stared coldly at Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo's brows were tightly knitted and she wasn't able to answer his question, as he lost his patience and pushed her away in frustration. Yi Qing Luo was suddenly flung out. The direction was towards God Thief. She staggered and knocked onto God Thief. Yi Qing Luo immediately steadied herself and held onto God Thief as she pulled God Thief back by a step. This young man. The word dangerous was written on him. Yi Qing Luo didn't feel that she was his match. If he wanted to escape with Holy Pirate, it would be as difficult as climbing up to the sky. Yi Qing Luo. Castle Lord stared at her as his gaze grew deeper and clearer. "Have you forgotten about me?" His voice was low and deep, as cold as ice. But behind this coldness, there was a trace of bitterness. Resentment? This phrase flashed past Yi Qing Luo's mind as she shuddered. This youth had called out her name. When on earth had she met him? From his tone, it seemed that they were very familiar with each other. "Good, very good, you've really forgotten about me." Castle Lord chuckled. As he smiled, his expressionless face became increasingly eerie. He took a step back, and his slender body swayed slightly. Anger, monstrous anger, burned in his eyes. That pair of icy cold eyes was like an ice blade, fiercely piercing towards Yi Qing Luo. "You've forgotten about me, I'll let you think carefully, who on earth am I?" The whirlpools in his eyes gathered into a storm. His words had just ended when his 5 fingers turned into an eagle and directly clasped onto Yi Qing Luo's neck. Damn! He was indeed sick. He struck out as he said he would. Yi Qing Luo's heart was in a great shock as she swept her feet and sidestepped his hand. At the same time, a feather fan appeared on her fingertips as it shot out an enchanting red glow, like a whirlwind, striking towards Castle Lord. Castle Lord didn't expect Yi Qing Luo's reaction to be so swift, nor did he expect Yi Qing Luo to strike out at him. Chapter 526. Castle Lord. When the guards at the prison cell's entrance saw that, they cried out in panic. A guard directly pounced forward, blocking in front of the Castle Lord. That whirlwind directly struck the guard's chest. "You want to kill me?" The Castle Lord's expression turned gloomier and gloomier, as though it was covered with a layer of frost, as an intense chill shot out from his eyes. "You actually want to kill me? You're sick." Yi Qing Luo kept her feather fan as she stared at him vigilantly. "You're allowed to kill me, but I'm not allowed to retaliate? Your life is mine. If I want you to die, then you have to die. The castle lord's gloomy eyes were swirling with a whirlpool, as though it was going to swallow up everything around it. Yi Qing Luo's brows creased as she was stared at by that pair of eyes until her hair stood on end. She was absolutely certain that this castle lord was sick. And it wasn't a light illness. Yi Qing Luo couldn't be bothered to tangle with this castle lord who had a hole in his brain. That bunch of brothers of hers were still waiting for her at the exquisite pagoda. My life is my own, no one can control my life. Yi Qing Luo squinted her eyes slightly as her lips curled into an enchanting smile. Castle Lord keeps saying that I've forgotten about you, yet still acting so irritable, could it be? I'm Castle Lord's dream lover? Her tone was extremely frivolous, with a hint of a Casanova flirting with a decent lady. But this frivolous tone made one unable to feel annoyed. Those guards who were holding on to the head of the prison guard and those injured guards were all shocked. They stared at Yi Qing Luo with their mouths agape, totally unable to believe that there was such a shameless, audacious lady in this world. Yi Qing Luo's meaning was very obvious. She was ridiculing the castle lord for pestering her endlessly. Which meant that she totally didn't know the castle lord. And narcissistically treating herself as the castle lord's dream lover. But the castle lord indeed didn't seem right. If it was any other intruder, even if it was a lady, in the castle lord's eyes, she was just a tool to work for Death God Castle. They had never seen their castle lord treating a lady like this. No, to put it more accurately, they had never seen their castle lord being so attentive towards anyone. In the eyes of the castle lord, no one could be tolerated. In this way, the raging fury in the dungeon guards' hearts towards Yi Qing Luo slowly subsided. Today my thoughts are indeed a little chaotic. Why don't we meet again another day and have a good chat, how about that? Yi Qing Luo's eyes narrowed as her lips curled into a charming smile, becoming more and more flirtatious. Her smile was like a blossoming mandala, releasing a soul-stirring charm. The castle lord was still expressionless, but his frosty eyes were faintly flickering with a faint luster. Just at this moment, the feather fan in Yi Qing Luo's hands suddenly opened up. All the straw in the dungeon was swept up by the whirlwind. That speed was extremely fast. In an instant, all of them covered the castle lord's body. The straw had an extremely pungent smell. Before the guards could react, they felt a whirlwind blow past them. In the cell, apart from the castle lord, who was covered in straw and resembled a wooden stake, there was no one else. Castle master. The guards were all alarmed. Chase them. Give chase. Stop that woman and god thief. Go and shoot the signal flare. Some guards swiftly reacted as they stood up and ran while shouting for their companions. No need. Her cold voice was light and slow. But it was filled with an irresistible charisma. The guards' footsteps halted. The guards who were surrounding the castle lord, helping him to sweep away the smelly straw on his body, were all stunned. Earlier when he was facing that young lady, he was fierce and evil, shouting for her to kill. Now, their castle lord intentionally let that young lady go. Not hesitating to let that young lady sweep his entire body with smelly straw. Chapter 527. Yi Qing Luo brought God Thief along as she executed her blink movement, and in a blink of an eye, she teleported to the place where the guards were resting. Her sharp vision swept the surroundings and very quickly, she saw a stone door in front of the guards' resting room. This should be the exit. She had not wasted her efforts to calculate the location of the guards' resting room in her mind. Yi Qing Luo turned her head towards the direction of God Thief's locked prison cell and didn't hear any footsteps chasing up to them. She heaved a sigh of relief. Earlier when she led God Thief to execute his blink movement, she actually had no confidence. After all, she had only comprehended less than 20% of the blink movement's secret art. Just her alone blink movement was already a little strenuous. Bringing God Thief along to blink movement, the success rate wasn't high. But just as she condensed her profound chi onto the glower flame fan and swept up that whirlwind, preparing to pull God Thief along to try to execute her blink movement. God Thief's hoarse voice rang beside her ears. Listen carefully to the incantation that I'm going to recite. Direct the incantation towards your profound heart jade and combine it with your original blink movement's secret art. Without waiting for her reaction, a string of complicated incantation was transmitted into her ears. Luckily her memory was strong and her reaction was godly. At the same time when she heard the incantation, she swiftly recited the incantation and followed God Thief's instructions. She successfully brought God Thief along and teleported successfully. At this moment, Yiqing Luo had no time to ask God Thief why he knew the blink movement's secret art. Are you able to keep up with our current actions? Yiqing Luo glanced sideways at God Thief as she supported him and walked slowly towards the stone door. Although God Thief's limbs moved slightly, but after all he had been restrained for 10 years and his body's various functions weren't able to return to normal so quickly. Every single step he took was supported by Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo had already touched the stone door's switch. Seeing the stone door slowly opening up, revealing the pitch-black and strange secret passage, Yiqing Luo glanced sideways at God Thief whose face was filled with embarrassment and didn't say anything more as she directly squatted down in front of him. God Thief was stunned. After waiting quietly for a moment, Yiqing Luo became impatient as she patted his shoulder. Quickly. If they chase up to us, none of us will be able to escape. God Thief's pitch-black face didn't show any emotions. He pursed his dry lips as his bright eyes sparkled with an unknown dark emotion. This little girl, why was it so different? You could have left me behind. Before he could finish his words, Yiqing Luo could no longer tolerate it as her body arched downwards, forcefully carrying his body on her back. God Thief obviously sensed that Yiqing Luo's breathing had turned heavier. Although he had suffered miserably in the dungeon over the past 10 years, and his entire body had become thinner, he was still able to maintain his composure. But he was still a man. Yiqing Luo didn't hesitate as she carried him on her back and directly walked into the secret tunnel. He stared at this girl who looked extremely thin, but was filled with great hope. Holy Pirate's heart, which had been silent for 10 years, slowly came back to life. Looks like the turning point of his fate had really arrived. One harbored such thoughts while the other was concentrating on searching for the map drawn by Dmo Xian in her mind. No one noticed that after they stepped into the secret passage, the stone door behind them quickly closed. Before it closed, a pair of bone-chilling, yet complicated eyes stared at them without blinking. Fort Master. The guard beside him was so frightened that he couldn't guess what the Fort Master was thinking. The Fort Master's eyes were cold. Just one look seemed to make one fall into an ice cellar, chilling to the bone. She wasn't pretending. The way she looked at him was as though she was looking at a stranger. She had really forgotten about him. Had forgotten who he was. Chapter 528. After stepping into the secret tunnel, Yiqing Luo was initially still very cautious, afraid that there were any mechanisms or arrays. After walking for a long distance, they did not encounter any danger. After turning a corner, Yiqing Luo heaved a sigh of relief when she saw the secret tunnels extending in all directions. Finally, it was the secret passage on the map. Yiqing Luo searched for her current location in her mind and found the secret tunnel in the direction of the exquisite pagoda as she headed straight for it. Young lady, the direction to leave is that way. God Thief laid on Yiqing Luo's shoulder as he reminded her. Yiqing Luo's footsteps didn't stop as she followed the map in her memory and the array marked by Dmo Xian, speedily avoiding every single array. Even though she was carrying Holy Pirate on her back, it did not slow her down. The strange footwork under his feet continued to be displayed. Holy Pirate furrowed his eyebrows. His eyes were filled with confusion. However, he didn't open his mouth to remind her again. Yiqing Luo was able to accurately avoid all the arrays that were set up, and when faced with numerous secret passageways, she didn't hesitate to choose a passageway to advance swiftly. Clearly, he knew where these secret passages led to. As Yiqing Luo walked forward, she scanned the surroundings. Along the way, he didn't see any signs of a fight or blood stains in the secret passage. Yiqing Luo heaved a sigh of relief as they neared the direction of the exquisite pagoda's secret chamber. However, he didn't have the time to finish exhaling. Yiqing Luo's footsteps suddenly halted. The expression on his face was somewhat grave. She could hear the sounds of fighting coming from the secret chamber where the exquisite pagoda was hidden. Maybe it was because he had smelled the bloody stench of holy pirate on his back for a long time. At this moment, the smell of fresh blood that seeped into his nose was extremely strong. Our brothers are in trouble. Yiqing Luo's pupils contracted as she increased her speed and directly rushed into the secret room. There were several luminous pearls hanging in the secret chamber. It illuminated the entire secret chamber. The secret chamber was already in chaos. The youngsters of the World Group were wielding their weapons as they battled with a bunch of cultivators dressed in green robes with mercenary group badges on their chests. Iron-blooded knights. Yiqing Luo saw the totem on the mercenary group badge. Wasn't he Yuchi Peng's Iron Blood Knight? There were quite a number of Iron Blood Knights, at least 40 of them. 30 over people were fighting with the World Group's youngsters. The remaining dozen or so people took out 3 interspatial bags and tossed all the rare treasures in the secret chamber into them. An interspatial pocket was a magical artifact that was second only to an interspatial ring. Normally, a space pocket could only hold 100 items at most. He really didn't want to let go of even the slightest bit of advantage. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes. Those people who were still in battle had not discovered her arrival. Yiqing Luo placed God Thief in a corner. Wait for me here. Saying that, Yiqing Luo clenched the feather fan in her hands tightly as she stood up and walked towards the World Group's direction. The leader of the Iron Blood Warriors was Yuchi Peng. Yan Xiaoyi and Xiao Jin trapped Yuchi Peng together and fought with him. Yuchi Peng's weapon was a huge axe. As he brandished it, it brought along a strong burst of profound energy, forcing Yan Xiaoyi and Xiao Jin to join forces, before they could barely block his gigantic axe. Whereas at this moment, behind Yan Xiaoyi and Xiao Jin, an Iron Blood Warrior cultivator got close to them as he silently raised the huge blade in his hands and directly chopped down towards their heads. Yiqing Luo's expression congealed as the feather fan in her hands opened up and numerous iron wires flew out, directly coiling around that cultivator's neck. Her fingers clasped the feather fan tightly as she pulled with all her might. The Iron Blood Warrior cultivator's body was flung towards Yuchi Peng. Chapter 529. Instantly, flesh and blood splattered everywhere. Yan Xiaoyi and Xiao Jin reacted in time as they speedily retreated, evading the huge axe's profound chi fluctuations. Qing Luo. On seeing that familiar figure appearing in front of them, the both of them were overjoyed. The other youngsters who were battling heard Yan Xiaoyi's voice and immediately turned their gazes over. Indeed, they saw that slender figure standing in front of Yuchi Peng. Her posture was outstanding as she stood upright. Her pair of charming eyes were like torches, as though it was tainted with endless frost as she stared coldly at Yuchi Peng. She didn't look at them. But the youngsters could feel Yiqing Luo's worry towards them. Their hearts, which had been hanging in suspense, mysteriously calmed down. As long as Yiqing Luo was here, everything would not be a problem. There was no difficulty which could obstruct their footsteps. They had already barged into Death God Castle and obtained the exquisite pagoda. Were they still afraid of the Iron Blood Warriors? Trying to spoil their mission, trying to disintegrate the World Group? No. But they could. The youngsters' battle intent was instantly ignited at the instance when Yiqing Luo appeared. God Thief, who was sitting in the corner, trying his best to loosen up his muscles, and when he saw this scene, a sliver of astonishment flashed past his eyes. These youngsters actually exploded with energy which made him feel overwhelmed in an instant. Their gazes were filled with a confident glow. Was it because of Yiqing Luo's appearance? It seemed as though these youngsters' gazes were indeed revolving around the young lady. Heh. Indeed, a lass who was filled with surprises. He was getting more and more interested in this lass. At this moment, Yiqing Luo didn't know what God Thief was thinking about. Her cold gaze swept past Yuqi Peng in disdain as her lips curled into a sneer of ridicule. Eldest young master Yuqi is such a filthy person. What's the logic of snatching the mission which had already been given away? Given away? You're obviously the one who snatched it away forcefully. Yuqi Peng's eyes burst out with an eerie viciousness. This originally belongs to me. If you don't have the ability to keep this mission, then don't try to be brave. Yiqing Luo sneered. That's right, if you don't have the ability to keep the mission, then why try to be brave? Now you're like a sinister rat, playing tricks behind the scenes, which really suits your Yuqi family style. Yuqi Peng's expression turned stiff. Yiqing Luo's words were obviously mocking him. In the mercenary guild, he was the one who couldn't hold on to the mission and gave it to the world group. A wisp of faintly discernible black energy flashed past Yuqi Peng's eyes. His hand which was holding the huge axe tightened as he directly chopped towards Yiqing Luo. What are you talking about? Speak with your ability. When the axe chopped down, it brought about an extremely strong fluctuation of Xian Qi. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes as she speedily took half a step back. Her eyes were filled with coldness as she curled her lips in disdain. Is young Master Yuqi so afraid of the world group? He actually didn't hesitate to use his own soul to make a deal. Looks like the Yuqi family's fate has come to an end. It was just as she and old man Song had guessed. This Yuqi Peng attached the aura of the dark forces onto the giant axe. Such a deal could easily end up like what happened to Yiqing Ling in the past, where her soul was completely devoured by the dark forces' profound yin qi. The reason why Yuqi Peng was so confident was indeed because of the deal with the dark forces. Hearing Yiqing Luo's words, Yuqi Peng's expression changed slightly. His gloomy eyes were filled with coldness. Occasionally, a wisp of black gas would flash past. You. How did you know? How did you know about the dark forces' energy? How did you know that he had used his soul to make a deal? His deepest hidden secret had been discovered by Yiqing Luo. He was even ridiculed by Yiqing Luo. This was as though his pride had been stepped on fiercely by Yiqing Luo. Chapter 530. Yiqing Luo's eyes sunk slightly. In her mind, old man Song sighed worriedly. If the dark force's energy was residing in Yuqi Peng's courtyard, then perhaps Yuqi Peng could still be saved. But now, Yuqi Peng chose to let the dark force's energy to attach itself to him at any time and place. Now that he was exposed by Yiqing Luo, his heart suffered a heavy blow. A restless and uneasy heart had an opening, allowing the dark force's energy to swiftly swallow Yuqi Peng's soul. When Yiqing Luo heard that, she recalled the previous Yiqing Ling. After she was controlled by the dark forces, she became a marionette. That energy was extremely strong. If the dark forces' energy was completely merged with Yuqi Peng, then it would be even harder to deal with. This mission, Iron Blood Warriors must take it. Yuqi Peng suppressed the panic and fear in his heart from being seen through, as he waved the huge axe in his hand, chopping towards Yiqing Luo's head. Yiqing Luo's lips curled upwards, as the feather fan in her hand spun, condensing profound qi into the feather fan, shooting out numerous bewitching red rays, like sharp blades, meeting Yuqi Peng's attack. Yiqing Luo resisted Yuqi Peng's attack. Moreover, it was a relaxed look, without any pressure at all. When Yan Xiao Yi and Xiao Jin saw this, they were reassured. At the same time, they joined the other youngsters' battle. Momentarily, the entire secret room was in chaos, as the blood stench became thicker. In mid-air, the red ray's sharp blade spun, encircling Yuqi Peng's surroundings once. Following that, like a whirlwind, it directly spun towards Yiqing Luo's direction. Yiqing Luo's slender hand stretched out, as she caught the feather fan steadily. The next second, her feet were like the wind, as she speedily closed in on Yuqi Peng. Yuqi Peng's huge axe looked heavy, but when he waved it, it was extremely nimble. His reaction was extremely swift, as that axe blocked Yiqing Luo's flying red ray's sharp blades. Only, when he blocked the last sharp blade, his back suddenly felt a chill. He saw Yi Qing Luo, who was originally standing 10 steps away from him, suddenly appearing behind his back. He raised his huge axe, speedily turned around and chopped downwards. This turn, he saw that crafty sneer in Yi Qing Luo's eyes. At the same time, Yu Qipeng felt a dull pain on his chest. He saw Yi Qing Luo had unknowingly slipped out a dagger from the handle of that feather fan. The dagger pierced into his chest without missing an inch. Immediately following that, Yi Qing Luo's slender hand slapped hard on the other side of his chest. The inertia caused Yu Qipeng's body to fly backwards. He pulled out the dagger that was stuck in his chest. His entire body smashed into the wall of the secret chamber. Yu Qipeng was in so much pain that his entire face contorted into a ball, as his pair of sinister and spicy eyes stared fiercely at Yi Qing Luo. It was as if he wanted to tear her into pieces. Yi Qing Luo pulled out a handkerchief from her sleeve and gently wiped the dagger on the handle of the fan. That posture, that attitude, was almost cold and merciless. Eldest young Master Yuqi, even if this mission is given to you, do you really think that you have this life to hand in this mission? Yi Qing Luo sneered, as she casually threw that blood-stained handkerchief onto the ground. She slowly walks towards Yu Qipeng. Her steps are light and her posture is elegant. A sense of fear arose in Yu Qipeng's heart for no reason. After being stabbed by Yi Qing Luo, followed by a palm strike, he could feel the energy in his body gradually disappearing. Yi Qing Luo's stab was very accurate. It was just a finger's distance away from his heart. It made him feel so much pain that he wished he was dead, but it didn't take his life. Chapter 531. Yi Qing Luo looked disdainfully at him from above as her eyes were filled with disdain. Yu Qipeng, think about it carefully. The Iron Blood Knights that you've worked so hard to manage, who are you going to hand over to as the group leader? Yu Qipeng's expression turned even more subservient. He was so angry that his entire body was twitching and shaking. The wound on his chest was getting more and more painful. Fresh blood kept gushing out, and in an instant, it had dyed his green long robe into blooming red flowers. You dare to kill me? Yu Qipeng clenched his teeth as he squeezed out these few words with extreme difficulty. His forehead was covered with cold sweat. Until now, Yu Qipeng still couldn't believe that he possessed such powerful strength. His profound grade had also risen by 3 grades because of this huge axe, surging straight into Earth profound grade. In just one move, he was defeated in the hands of a young lass who was still wet behind her ears. Kill you? Do you need me to do it? Yi Qing Luo sneered in disdain as she squinted her eyes as she looked at the huge axe in his hand with a smile which didn't look like a smile. You. This was simply a naked humiliation. Yu Qipeng was so angry that he gritted his teeth as a ball of red emerged on his pale face due to the raging flames. Smart eldest young Master Yuqi, still haven't discovered it? Yi Qing Luo's brows rose slightly as the arc on her lips became extremely ridiculing. What do you mean? Yu Qipeng realized the strangeness in Yi Qing Luo's words as his heart suddenly contracted. An ominous premonition started to spread from the bottom of his heart. His question didn't get an answer. Yi Qing Luo smiled lightly as that long and narrow eyes curled into an alluring arc. That pair of charming eyes was fixed on a certain spot. Yu Qipeng followed her gaze as he looked over. In a split second, his entire face turned as white as paper. His pupils widened as his entire body started to tremble uncontrollably. He saw the blood oozing out from his chest. Those drops of blood formed a bloodline, and with an extremely fast speed, it flowed towards the huge axe in his right hand. Yu Qipeng's pupils continued to expand. What was going on? This huge axe actually sucked human blood? The surrounding Iron Blood warriors, cultivators, and the World Group's youngsters were all stunned by this scene. They watched in disbelief as the densely packed bloodlines spread out on Yu Qipeng's body. Making a deal with your soul doesn't mean that you will give your soul to the other party after you die. Yi Qing Luo looked at his terrified and flustered look, watching him struggling on his deathbed as she laughed softly. Living souls are much more delicious than dead souls. What the dark forces want is the soul that you leave first. Yiqing Luo's slender fingers pressed against her lower jaw. Her curved eyes were filled with an enchanting smile. Save. Save me. Because of fear, Yu Qipeng's entire face was already distorted, looking sinister and terrifying. No wonder he felt his strength draining away so quickly. No wonder he felt like he couldn't muster any strength. You know, this is a soul exchange. You can definitely save me. Save me. There was no one who did not fear death. Especially someone like Yu Qipeng, who was extremely ambitious. How could he bear to die now? There are conditions for saving you. Yiqing Luo's eyes were cold. Yu Qipeng hurriedly nodded his head. As long as you save me, I will agree to any request. I promise you everything. Yiqing Luo's vision revolved around the surroundings. All of you have heard that right. Those cultivators who were scared silly were now in a dazed state. Perhaps it was because Yiqing Luo's aura was too strong. When Yiqing Luo's gaze fell onto them, all of them subconsciously straightened their backs. Heard it. Yiqing Luo looked towards Mo Han Shang. Chapter 532. Mo Han Shang's identity was the most powerful proof. He wasn't afraid that Yu Qipeng would regret. Unless he didn't want to mingle in the mercenary world anymore. Then. I'll save you. Yiqing Luo took a step back as she looked at Yu Qipeng's malevolent and twisted face as her lips curled cruelly. But, can you take it? Yes. I can. As long as I can keep my life. I can take any kind of pain. Yu Qipeng felt that the blood in his body was almost sucked dry. His face turned paler and paler and he didn't even have the energy to open his mouth to speak. His heart was getting more and more flustered as he kept urging Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes as her expression was calm without even blinking as she shook the feather fan in her hands. A red ray sharp blade shot out. Ah, a miserable shriek was heard from Yu Qipeng's mouth. That hand which was holding the huge axe was directly chopped off. Fresh blood started to gush out. At the instant when his hand was chopped off, Yu Qipeng's energy which he had lost instantly returned to his body. He was in so much pain that he kept rolling on the ground. Iron Blood Warriors cultivators were all dumbstruck. Yiqing Luo actually chopped off their group leader's hand? But they didn't dare to say a single word. They were afraid of Yiqing Luo. A 14 or 15-year-old young lady, after doing such a cruel thing, could still display such calmness. Even that pair of cold and charming eyes didn't have the slightest fluctuation. Yiqing Luo, you. Yu Qipeng was in so much pain that he curled up into a ball as the fury and hatred in his heart surged up at this instance. She chopped off his hand. He wanted to hold the huge axe, the hand which led the Iron Blood Warriors into battle. But it was chopped off just like that. From now onwards, he had become a cripple. What about me? Isn't this to save you? Yiqing Luo raised her brows disapprovingly. If not for this, do you think you still have the energy to howl so loudly? Yu Qipeng's eyes which were filled with fury instantly choked. He was stunned for a moment as he endured the intense pain in his wrist. Indeed, earlier he didn't even have the energy to speak, not to mention rolling on the ground, or even flying into a rage at Yiqing Luo. That feeling of his body being sucked dry, the feeling of his energy being sucked dry, had disappeared. But if his hand was chopped off, how would he be able to wield an axe in the future? How would he be able to enter the battlefield? He could have just told him to throw away that giant axe, so why did he still? The dark force's energy is the profounding qi. Once it absorbs your living soul, will you be able to struggle free from that broken axe? Yiqing Luo seemed to have seen through Yu Qipeng's thoughts as she sneered. Even if she could really throw away that axe, Yiqing Luo would not say it out. She wasn't a kind-hearted person, and towards a person like Yu Qipeng, if she didn't teach him a lesson, it would truly make Nanping furious. What kind of place was Death God Castle? This was a place that made countless thieves tremble in fear. she could understand that Yuchi Peng wanted to take back the mission. But Yiqing Luo couldn't understand why Yuchi Peng actually started a fight with the world group in Death God Castle's secret room. If he triggered the mechanism, he would have the power of the dark forces to protect himself. But what about the others? Ever since Yiqing Luo had the idea of establishing a mercenary group, the world group's youngsters were her reverse scale. She had merely chopped off one of Yuchi Peng's hand, and that was already considered as being merciful. Yiqing Luo's half-squinted eyes were icy cold as her mind recalled the time when she was in the underground prison, seeing that sick castle lord as she shuddered. Chapter 533. Only then did the profound practitioners of the Iron Blood Warriors react. Fortunately, Yuchi Peng specially brought along 2 alchemists for this trip. They were pushed in front of Yuchi Peng, shivering as they helped Yuchi Peng to stop his bleeding and bandage him up. They also fed him quite a lot of medicinal pills. Under Yiqing Luo's urging, they tossed and turned for the time it took to brew a cup of tea. By the time the blood on Yuchi Peng's wrist had stopped, Yiqing Luo speedily asked everyone to leave the secret room. After everyone left the secret room, Yiqing Luo was still standing in the secret room. Qing Luo, still not leaving? Yan Xiaoyi leaned in. But he saw Yiqing Luo walking to the side of the huge axe as she stared at that huge axe, half squinting her eyes as though she was thinking about something. On hearing that Yiqing Luo had yet to come out, Yuchi Peng hurriedly ordered the cultivator who was carrying him to rush into the secret room. "What are you doing?" Although Yiqing Luo had saved his life, but from the bottom of his heart, Yuchi Peng despised these brats who were still wet behind the ears. Moreover, he had always been suspicious of Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo didn't bother about Yuchi Peng as she slowly squatted down. Yuchi Peng then realized that Yiqing Luo wanted to take away his huge axe. Although the giant axe contained some dark force's power, the power was still there. To profounders, what they desired the most was strength. Yuchi Peng was the same. Otherwise, he would not have used his soul to exchange for more power with the dark forces. Seeing Yiqing Luo's interest towards the huge axe, he thought of the huge axe's power. Fear was fear, but his thirst for power made him unwilling to truly give up on this giant axe. How could Yiqing Luo not see through Yuchi Peng's vile thoughts? She sneered and moved her body away. "Are you sure you still want this broken axe?" Yuchi Peng's gaze stared straight at the huge axe. Immediately, his face was filled with shock, and his entire body trembled. On that huge axe, there was still half of Yuchi Peng's arm. It did not loosen from the handle at all because it was cut off. His 5 fingers were still tightly gripping the handle of the giant axe. It should have been covered in blood because half of his arm had been cut off. However, there was no trace of blood on that hand. Furthermore, it was pale and shriveled, as though it was only skin wrapped around a few bones. Yuchi Peng's scalp tingled as goosebumps appeared all over his body. If he had continued to hold on to that giant axe, it wouldn't just be that half of his hand that had turned into a dried corpse. At this moment, how would Yuchi Peng dare to have any thoughts towards that giant axe? Looking at Yuchi Peng's expression, Yiqing Luo knew what he was thinking. She curled her lips in disdain, lowered her eyes again, and reached for the giant axe. "Little girl, wait." Suddenly, an old voice came from behind. Soon after, she heard the sound of staggering footsteps approaching her step by step. Yiqing Luo's hand, which had yet to touch the huge axe, suddenly paused. She turned her head and saw Holy Pirate crawl out from the corner. He walked toward her with strange and comical steps. The people standing at the entrance of the secret room were startled. None of them realized that there was someone else in this secret room. Holy shit! Who was this filthy, stinky old man? His skin color was completely obscured by the filth on his body. Dark forces? Holy Pirate didn't bother about the gazes on him as he walked directly to Yiqing Luo's side and lifted his leg to kick the huge axe. Yiqing Luo tilted her head. "You know?" Holy Pirate didn't say a word. On that pitch-black face, Yiqing Luo couldn't tell what his current emotions were. Chapter 534. God Thief slowly squatted down. Although his actions seemed stiff, but at least he squatted down. He stretched out his hand as he picked up the huge axe. When the huge axe was on the ground, other than feeling that the 5 withered fingers were a little strange, there wasn't anything else. But at this moment, the minute God Thief touched the huge axe, they saw a ball of black, the 5 fingers which were cut off from the long handle, charging directly towards God Thief's hand. The entire huge axe was instantly encircled by the black chi. God Thief. Yi Qing Luo frowned as she berated. The feather fan in her hands swiftly waved towards that black chi. Wait a minute. God Thief's voice was gentle and calm. Yi Qing Luo's actions stopped abruptly. Her brows creased as she looked at God Thief in puzzlement. But she saw God Thief's finger flicking lightly, and that ball of black chi seemed to have touched something terrifying as it speedily escaped. God Thief stretched out his other hand as he casually waved it on the huge axe. That ball of black chi was instantly dispersed. That half of the hand which was holding the long handle suddenly burned into black ashes. A huge axe reverted back to its normal look. But, no matter how ordinary this huge axe's outer appearance was, but the scene of it forming bloodlines on Yuchi Peng's body, sucking Yuchi Peng's blood and then being enveloped by the extreme yin chi was still deeply rooted in everyone's mind. Keep it, we'll go back and research on it. God Thief passed the huge axe over to Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo was stunned as she immediately understood the reason why God Thief didn't allow her to touch the huge axe. After several rounds of understanding towards the dark force's energy, Yi Qing Luo roughly knew that this gust of profound yin chi depended on something to survive. Which was also the so-called host. Just like Yuchi Peng in his courtyard, he would be attached to by the profound yin chi, but he couldn't leave the courtyard. And this huge axe was the same. The profound yin chi was attached to the huge axe, and if Yi Qing Luo had directly touched the huge axe, the next host which the black chi would attach to would be her. Why was God Thief not afraid of this energy at all? Dealing with it, he still looked as though he could do it with ease. This wasn't the time to ask questions, so Yi Qing Luo didn't ask any further. She received the huge axe and placed it into the profound phoenix ring, and with her back facing God Thief, she squatted down. Xiao Jin walked in. Qing Luo, let me carry him, you lead the way. Holy Pirate did not hesitate. He jumped onto Xiao Jin's back. Young and strong lads make people feel at ease. Little girl, if I let you carry me any longer, this old man's bones will be burned by your bones. Hearing God Thief's words, Yi Qing Luo's lips twitched as she rolled her eyes and walked past the crowd as she walked to the front, preparing to lead the way. Suddenly, a sharp whistle rang throughout the entire Death God Castle. The whistle was sharp, ear-piercing, and deafening. Those with lower profound ranks immediately covered their ears and screamed in pain. Yi Qing Luo's expression congealed. It's too late, the castle lord has taken action. Castle master? Yuchi Peng exclaimed. He had previously inquired about this mission and naturally understood the situation in Death God Castle. The castle lord of Death God Castle had always been a legend. Some even felt that the so-called castle lord totally didn't exist. The castle lord, in Yi Qing Luo's words, was it really the castle lord of Death God Castle? Qing Luo, did you see Death God Castle's castle lord earlier? Yan Xiaoyi's brows creased slightly as she recalled the scene where Yi Qing Luo passed the map to her and left alone. Are you all right? Chapter 535. Everyone was astonished. Especially the World Group's youngsters. When they heard Yi Qing Luo's words, they instantly became anxious. After all, in their hearts, Yi Qing Luo was the strongest among them. Yi Qing Luo's invincibility was deeply ingrained in their hearts. He had totally forgotten that Yi Qing Luo's profound grade was actually the lowest among the 20 over youngsters. Then what should we do? Xiao Jin turned around to look at the group of brothers behind him. In the Fort Master's territory, even if we wanted to leave secretly, I'm afraid it's impossible. Their whereabouts had been discovered. This also meant that as the castle master of Death God Castle, he could make use of the various formations or mechanisms in the castle to observe all of their actions. Yiqing Luo's fingers clenched tightly as her slender brows creased. Bring them along and follow the original route back. I'll attract them. No. No. This suggestion had just left Yiqing Luo's mouth when she was interrupted by Qiao Jin and Yan Xiaoyi at the same time. Yiqing Luo had already said that this castle lord was extremely dangerous. If Yiqing Luo was the only one who attracted the castle lord's attention, wouldn't that be pushing Yiqing Luo into the abyss of danger? Trust me, I'll be fine. Yiqing Luo summoned Shiju out from the pet space and flipped herself onto its back as she shook her head lightly. If we stay here, none of us will be able to walk out of Death God Castle. But after you guys leave Death God Castle, if I still haven't come out, look for Ah Xian to save me. Yan Xiaoyi and Qiao Jin looked at each other. What Yiqing Luo said wasn't without reason. If they were to stay here, then no one would be able to leave Death God Castle alive. They might as well act separately. As long as they brought the Overlord over, they would definitely be able to save Yiqing Luo. What they needed to do now was to believe in Yiqing Luo. He trusted in her ability to survive. Qing Luo. Qiao Jin eventually pursed his lips as he called out Yiqing Luo's name. Yiqing Luo turned around. We believe in you, so stay alive and wait for us, for His Majesty. The petite figure sitting on Shiju's back stiffened slightly. Trust. These two words, ever since she entered the devil class, she had heard it a few times. She was very glad that she was allocated to the devil class, and was able to get to know this group of brothers. He had never felt so close to another person's heart. From the brothers of the devil class, he could feel such a warm feeling in his heart. They saw her as their hope. And they were also her hope. Yiqing Luo's lips curled up into a smile filled with confidence. All right. She spat out a word from her pink lips. With that, the giant leopard beast beneath him moved its limbs and disappeared into the secret passage in the blink of an eye. The profound practitioners of the Iron Blood Warriors had been listening attentively to their conversation. After all, this group of people was their only hope of survival. Then, when they heard them talking about asking Ah Xian or His Majesty to save them, they were all dumbfounded. Dizun? Did they hear wrongly? How could these little kids be related to the high and mighty Dizun? But when he thought about it, these kids were talking to him about how to escape from Death God Castle. It wouldn't do them any good to mention Dizun for no reason. Moreover, the Dizun's name seemed to contain the word Xian. The Iron Blood Warriors candidates all drew in a breath of cold air as they suppressed the restlessness in their hearts. If these youngsters were really related to the Dizun, then they had almost killed all these youths just now. Chapter 536. Yiqing Luo, who was speedily rushing towards the direction of the whistle, didn't have the time to delve into the thoughts of the Iron Blood Warriors. She had to fight for time for her brothers to leave. If she didn't guess wrongly, Castle Lord had created such a huge commotion, it should be because of her. It wasn't that Yiqing Luo was narcissistic. But this Castle Lord. His attitude towards her was really as though he hadn't taken any medication. She only felt that the Castle Lord's face was rather familiar. But that didn't mean that she really knew him. Castle Lord had a "you dare to forget about me" expression, which made Yiqing Luo's heart filled with curses. In her mind, there really wasn't a single bit of memory regarding the Castle Lord. That astonishing, outstanding face, if they really had a deep relationship, Yiqing Luo would absolutely not forget about it. The whistle was getting nearer and nearer. Along the way, Yiqing Luo didn't intentionally avoid any arrays or mechanisms, directly passing through without any obstruction. She was even more certain of the guess in her heart. This Castle Lord's target was indeed her. He intentionally created such a commotion, just to lure her to look for him. In the long secret passage, a ray of light was faintly projected from the front. She was about to reach her destination. That destination which the Castle Lord had set for her. Yi-Ching Luo didn't have the slightest feeling of relief. Her heart was beating wildly. She frowned as she raised her hand and pressed it against her chest. The rate of her heartbeat was slightly hurried. She was nervous, but also afraid. It had been a long time since she had such a feeling. The whistle sounded, and it stopped. A creak sound was heard and the flickering door in front of her slowly opened just as Yi-Ching Luo approached it. A ray of bright light shot into Yi-Ching Luo's eyes. She raised her hand and blocked that ray of light. Squinting her eyes, she stared vigilantly at everything behind this door. Then, he saw a figure standing against the light. A blood-red robe, under the light, seemed to be plated with a layer of gold, sparkling with luster. His black hair fluttered on his shoulders even though there was no wind. Looking from afar, Yi-Ching Luo felt the man's entire body emitting a chill. His eyes were filled with a chilly aura, staring straight at her. Yi-Ching Luo's heart trembled. Looking around, he didn't see anyone else. Yi-Ching Luo's brows creased tightly. That whistle just now, wasn't that the whistle to summon the guards of Death God Castle? How could this be? Yi-Ching Luo's expression suddenly sunk. You want to deal with my friend? The man who stood against the light took heavy steps towards Yi-Ching Luo. The cold air that came from his body assaulted her face. He lowered his eyes, his gaze cold, and his tone overbearing. The safety of your friends depends on whether you listen to me or not. Her voice was cold and emotionless. But Yi-Ching Luo somehow heard a cool and wild feeling from it. Are you threatening me? Yi-Ching Luo raised her brows. She really couldn't figure out what the lord of the castle wanted to do. The castle lord raised his chin. He was indeed threatening Yi-Ching Luo. Yi-Ching Luo laughed involuntarily. Do you know that what I hate the most is threats? Her smile was like a flower, but it did not reach her eyes. Her voice paused and Yi-Ching Luo's figure moved. Her speed was extremely fast and in just an instant, the feather fan in her hands was aimed directly at the castle lord's chest. The castle lord dodged sideways. Following that, his long arm stretched out, grabbing Yi-Ching Luo's wrist. Using a little strength, Yi-Ching Luo's feet lost balance as she staggered and fell forward. Chapter 537. You still want to kill me? The icy cold words seemed to be squeezed out from the slits of his teeth, containing a thick grievance. Castle Lord's chilly eyes were filled with an intense chill as he stared at Yi-Ching Luo sinisterly. That gaze seemed to want to tear Yi-Ching Luo into pieces, but it concealed some other emotions. It was so complicated that Yi-Ching Luo couldn't understand it at all. To catch bandits, first catch the ringleader. If I catch you, would I still be afraid of those guards stopping my brothers? Yi-Ching Luo calmly met Castle Lord's sharp gaze, not concealing her own thoughts at all. Yi-Ching Luo. Castle Lord flew into a rage out of humiliation as he bellowed. The cold and arrogant face of the wooden man twisted a little. Yi-Ching Luo's brows creased even tighter. From this look, Castle Lord's face seemed even more familiar. Where on earth had she seen this face before? Suddenly, Yi-Ching Luo had a flash of inspiration as she suddenly thought of something. You are that. That chilly expression and sharp gaze young man. Upon hearing Yi-Ching Luo's words, the cold lines on his face instantly softened. He stretched out his hand and his cold fingers lifted Yi-Ching Luo's lower jaw. He forced her gaze to meet his. That pair of malicious eyes faintly sparkled with a ray of hope. You've recalled? His tone was filled with joy. Yi-Ching Luo frowned, thinking of him made him so happy. Only, in her memory, she didn't feel that she knew him. Yi-Ching Luo pursed her lips as she tried to probe. Have you been to Heavenly Academy before? The glow in the young man's eyes darkened. After some time, he nodded his head. Then if I didn't remember wrongly, have we met at Heavenly Academy's novice training grounds? Yi-Ching Luo added another sentence to probe. At that time, she was at the training grounds, following the instructor's instructions, training. She felt someone staring at her and casually glanced over. It seemed that this castle lord was among those few masters. She even used his face to compare with Dmo Xian. Only, she didn't put that episode in her heart, so naturally she didn't remember that young man. Wasn't it normal to not recognize him when she saw him? Yiqing Luo was really in a daze. The cold fingers on her chin suddenly tightened their grip, causing her to frown and suck in a breath of cold air from the pain. Damn it! Was it acting up again? A cold glint flashed past Yiqing Luo's charming eyes, profound chi palm wind stirred and profound chi broke out of her body. Her palm was wrapped in a ball of red light as she swung it straight at the castle lord's chest. However, the castle lord had no intention of dodging. He pinched Yiqing Luo's lower jaw like that, as though a wild beast staring at its prey, staring at her without blinking. Yiqing Luo's palm strike landed directly on his chest. His expression did not change in the slightest. Only his slender body stiffened for a moment. A shallow, muffled groan escaped from his nostrils. The castle lord's face became even colder. Yiqing Luo was cursing in her heart. What kind of mental illness was this? He would rather be beaten than let go of her. Her palm strike was merciless. If it was any other lower profound grade cultivator, their internal organs would be affected by this palm strike. But he didn't even change his expression. On the contrary, his fingers clenched even tighter. The piercing pain from her lower jaw made Yiqing Luo feel that her lower jaw bone was about to be crushed by him. But this young man was stubborn, even if it was a head-on clash, he refused to let go. Yiqing Luo's reaction made the whirlpool in the young man's eyes surge even more intensely. His thin lips curled into an extremely shallow arc as he spat out a sentence coldly. My name is Zhu Wu Xian. From now onwards, you better remember this name. Chapter 538. In front of her eyes, that cold and aloof face gradually enlarged in her pupils. Damn it! Did the scene need to suddenly become so strange? What was going on with this cool mad battle style? Molesting her just because of a disagreement? Yiqing Luo's palm wind rose again. This palm strike of hers wasn't aimed towards the castle lord's chest. But it was directly aimed towards the castle lord's face. At the same time, she raised her leg and kicked towards the man's weakest spot. However, the castle lord seemed to have guessed her actions as his slender long legs pressed down on Yiqing Luo's legs as he locked both of her hands. His thin lips and Yiqing Luo's were separated by a finger's distance. Ow! A beast's cry was heard, and immediately following that, a white figure flashed past. Yiqing Luo only felt something furry covering her face. The castle lord's hand left the restraint on her. His slender body took a step back. Yiqing Luo, who had released the restraint, speedily hugged the little furry ball on her face as she retreated out of the castle lord's attack range. Little Nine. This little furry ball wasn't anyone else but the nine-tailed fox. Little Nine's sharp mouth stuck close to Yiqing Luo's face. Only this time, it wasn't licking her face like usual. Instead, it revealed its sharp teeth and bit her. Little Nine controlled his strength, but Yiqing Luo still felt a piercing pain. Little Nine was angry. Dmo Xian passed Little Nine to her so that he could protect her in Death God Castle. But unfortunately, Yiqing Luo left Little Nine outside Death God Castle. Alright, Little Nine, it's my fault, it's my fault. Luckily you came over in time to save me. Yiqing Luo rubbed the area where she was bitten and rubbed its little head as her eyes were covered with a layer of warmth. Humph. Little Nine turned its head away as its little emotions started to surge up. It felt that its future mistress didn't trust its ability. Although it couldn't be compared to future mistress's white tiger sacred beast, but at least it was the one and only nine-tailed fox sacred beast. Look, it just didn't catch up to her, and future mistress was almost kissed by another man. If Master knew that Master couldn't bear to vent his anger on his future mistress, he would definitely vent his anger on it. The pitch-black fox eyes of Little Nine formed a long and narrow arc, fiercely glaring at Shiju, who was sitting up straight. He was simply about to vomit blood. Seeing his master being molested by another man, he did not step forward to help his master. Shiju blinked its bell-like eyes innocently, not understanding why the nine-tailed fox's eyes were filled with contempt. It raised its claws and scratched its ears, looking confused. It was hard for Shiju not to understand. Shiju's age as a mirage beast was equivalent to a 6 or 7-year-old child. Other than obeying the orders of its master, it did not have the intelligence to act on its own and distinguish right from wrong. The atmosphere between the two beasts and the man was extremely harmonious. The castle lord who had his face scratched by Little Nine earlier touched the blood stains on his face as his sinister eagle-like black eyes stared coldly at Yi Qing Luo. She smiled at a small battle pet, and her side profile with gentle lines. An indescribable rage surged from the bottom of his heart. Why couldn't she show such an expression in front of him? Obviously. In the past she would smile at him. But now in her eyes, he totally didn't exist. She would rather place her vision on a little fur ball than to look at him. Little Nine, who had shrunk into Yi Qing Luo's palm and was nibbling on her finger to show that he was angry, suddenly felt his hair stand up as his little body trembled. Chapter 539. Yi Qing Luo followed Little Nine's line of sight and realized that the castle lord was still standing by the side. Her slender brows creased slightly. What on earth are you trying to do? Remember me. 3 emotionless words came out of his mouth. Yi Qing Luo was really about to throw up blood. Hadn't she already remembered him? Could it be that they had met before at the freshman training grounds? She really didn't have any impression at all. Wait a minute. Yi Qing Luo suddenly thought of something as her slender brows creased even tighter. Zhu Wu Xan? Zhu? Master Chu? Yi Qing Luo's expression suddenly congealed as her eyes were filled with puzzlement. You are that Master Chu? Earlier when she was forcibly molested by him, she didn't notice that Zhu Wu Xian had said his own name. Now that she thought about it, she recalled that not long ago, Master Chu had sent his followers to send her medicine and pills. As well as the Elder Quarter's Grand Elder who mentioned Master Chu. It was him? Yes. Zhu Wu Xian replied decisively, I thought, you haven't forgotten about me. Yi Qing Luo remained silent. In her memories, there really wasn't any memory of Zhu Wu Xian. She had completely merged with this body and all the memories were clearly remembered in her mind. She was 100% sure that she really didn't know Zhu Wu Xian. Had Zhu Wu Xian recognized the wrong person? Yi Qing Luo. While she remained silent, Zhu Wu Xian took a step towards her. Little Nine, who was in her arms, instantly leapt onto the ground. A ball of dazzling light shone and Little Nine's figure became extremely huge as he bared his fangs and stared at this young man who was approaching his future mistress with ill intentions. Those 9 tails swayed as it blocked Yi Qing Luo completely. Zhu Wu Xian's footsteps halted as that expressionless face turned extremely ugly. His eyes overflowed with a thick murderous intent. How dare you! Yi Qing Luo's expression sunk as her footwork moved and she dashed in front of Little Nine. Danger. This Zhu Wu Xian was extremely dangerous. The murderous intent which appeared in his eyes represented that he really wanted to kill Little Nine. He was simply a lunatic. Yi Qing Luo, follow me, I can let these people go. The lingering murderous intent in Zhu Wu Xian's eyes slowly disappeared under Yi Qing Luo's low growl. That pair of calm eagle eyes stared fixedly at her. Yi Qing Luo frowned slightly. Go with him? Yi Qing Luo was certain that she had never met Zhu Wu Xian before. However, she definitely could not say that Zhu Wuxin might have mistaken her for someone else. Zhu Wu Xian's emotions were unstable and he was temperamental, sometimes gloomy, sometimes expressionless, so Yi Qing Luo really couldn't grasp his temperament. If Zhu Wuxin found out that he had recognized the wrong person, it was very likely that he would kill her without hesitation. The Brothers of the World group would also suffer a calamity. She pursed her lips, feeling a little vexed. If she could be a little stronger, she wouldn't be afraid of Zhu Wuxin's power. This feeling was really depressing. She clenched her fists tightly as her mind raced, trying to think of a way to stall for time. As long as the World Group's brothers left Death God Castle, she had the confidence to escape from Death God Castle. As the saying goes, the ancients have said, I am a girl who knows when to yield and when to stand tall. Her silence made Zhu Wu Xian even more irritated and impatient. He might as well walk towards Yiqing Luo directly, as his gaze was icy cold and malicious. Before Little Nine was able to stop him, Zhu Wu Xian had already stretched out his hand towards Yiqing Luo's shoulder. Follow me. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes as she avoided his hand. Her body retreated by half a step, but she bumped into a thick meat wall. Chapter 540. This wall of flesh was extremely thick and warm, emitting a soothing sandalwood fragrance. That strong and powerful arm wrapped tightly around her waist. Yiqing Luo's heart gradually calmed down. Ah Xian, Yiqing Luo's eyes sparkled with joy as she swiftly turned around and threw herself into the man's arms. He actually came. It's Xiao Yi and the others, they're fine. Dmo Xian's large palm stroked Yiqing Luo's hair as his fingertips twirled a lock of hair, gently fiddling with it. The Imperial Palace's disciples have already brought them back safely. The Imperial Palace? Yiqing Luo was stunned as she raised her head to look at that peerless face. After a while, she revealed a smile that could topple cities. Her arms encircled Dmo Xian's waist. Her face was plastered tightly against Dmo Xian's chest, listening to his heartbeat, smelling his scent. A sweet sense of satisfaction slowly flowed in his heart. The reason why Dmo Xian appeared here was not because Qiao Jin and the others had left Death God Castle in time and called for Dmo Xian. Instead, he was worried about her. Hence, after she and her brothers entered the Death God Castle, she gathered the Monarch Palace's disciples and waited outside. Dmo Xian let her do what she wanted to do, but unbeknownst to her, he had made preparations for the worst outcome. You don't blame me? Dmo Xian lowered his eyes to look at the little person in his arms as his lips curled into a faint arc. His eyes were filled with love. Why would I blame you? Yiqing Luo rubbed her face against his chest. I know you're worried about me. There's always a chance. Just like now, Yiqing Luo had met Zhu Wu Xian. The world group suffered a sneak attack from the Iron Blood Warriors. If Dmo Xian had not appeared, the situation today would be totally different. I thought, you don't want to rely on others. Dmo Xian's eyes were filled with tenderness as he hugged the woman in his arms tightly. Looking at her, Dmo Xian knew that she was not injured. Fortunately, she had protected herself well. He thought that Yiqing Luo would be angry. Because this unique girl wouldn't rely on anyone. Yiqing Luo's eyes were filled with gentleness as her heart was fiercely touched. She raised her head and met his long and narrow peach blossom eyes. Her voice was gentle as she said word by word, but, you're not someone else. Yes, she did not want to rely on others. Because in this world, the only reliable person was himself. However, Dmo Xian was different. She was willing to hand over her back to Dmo Xian and was willing to rely on Dmo Xian. This man would be her future husband. She should learn to rely on him. What's more, this man's intentions were all for her. How could she bear to be angry and blame him? Good, very good, ha ha ha. Yiqing Luo, good job. Broken laughter came one after another. Zhu Wu Xian smiled as he slowly retreated. He pointed at Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian, with an expression of a husband caught in the act, his eagle eyes filled with agony. You purposely pretended to forget about me and hooked up with another man, Yiqing Luo. To think that I've been thinking about you for so many years. The two's tender feelings were interrupted by this sharp laughter. When Dmo Xian heard Zhu Wu Xian's accusations, he lowered his eyes towards Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo had a puzzled look as she shook her head. So many years? Many years? What kind of joke was he cracking? She wasn't even 15 years old yet. Before this, based on her reputation as a waste, it was impossible for her to know such an incredible figure like Zhu Wu Xian. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.